and we start inflating because of our debt, who does it hurt the most? It hurts those individuals that are on a fixed income, that don't have the luxury of going back to work or don't have the capability of going back to work. What happens to them? Their standard of living goes down. Their ability to cope. You know, as I talk to families across America, what they're doing still to this day is they're sitting down at the table and they're visiting with one another and they're saying, here's the money in and here's the money out. How do we increase the money in and how do we decrease the money out? What they're doing is they're picking what's important. They're picking what's priority. And they're going without for the things that are not as important. I agree. We have 9.7% unemployment. We ought to be helping those people. I agree that we ought to be helping with Coburn. I agree that we ought to do the dock fix. We had an opportunity last night to fix it for 3 years and 9 months, paid for, and this body rejected it. I agree with those things. What I don't agree with is doing those good things on the back of our grandchildren. When and if we do those good things and we haven't paid for them, what we've done has been dishonest with the American people. Not only in our action, but in our oath. You see, it is easy to spend other people's money if, in fact, you're sitting up here secure with a pension and a good salary, and there's no consequences to us. We'll all do fine. But the vast majority of Americans won't do fine. And the future of America won't shine bright. It will shine dimly because we have this tremendous yoke of heaviness and drudgery on our back because we, in fact, won't make hard choices. Now, this isn't the first Congress. The Republicans didn't make hard choices when they were in control. It's not partisan. It's a disease of elected officials that they think they can get away with making the without making the hard choices because the costs for not making the hard choices come down the road. Well, we've been doing that now for 30 years in this country. We've not made hard choices, a lot of mistakes. No question Republicans have more than their fair share of those mistakes. But rather than point fingers, what we ought to say is, what is the problem? What are the symptoms of the problem? And how do you fix them? Many economists say it is impossible for us to grow our way out of this situation. And we had a nice bump in the fourth quarter, thanks to hundreds of billions of dollars that got pumped into the economy. And there truly were a lot of jobs saved by the Stimulus Act. Maybe not as efficiently as I would like, but there were jobs saved. Nobody can dispute that. The question is are we going to continue the policies that got us into the trouble? As I practice medicine, the one mistake doctors make that when they get into trouble is that they treat symptoms instead of disease. And here's the best example I know. Somebody comes to you with a fever, a cough, malaise, not feeling good. Well, as a doctor, I can give them a medicine for the cough. I can fix that. And I can give them something for the fever and the muscle aches. I can fix that. But if I don't diagnose what is causing the fever, the muscle aches, and the cough, what I've done is covered up the disease. And that's what we're doing. And they may get well because the body is a miraculous part of creation, has tremendous defenses. But the mortality rate for pneumonia at the turn of the last century was 60%. Today, in somebody under 80, it's about 1%. Because we have the drugs to treat the real disease, not the symptoms. What's going to describe our action? Are we going to treat the symptoms? Or are we going to treat the disease? My hope would be that we could lock hands and say, here's a start. Here's $9.2 billion that we, in fact, can find a way to come together and pay for. Make sure these people get these benefits that are needed in this time of difficult economic situation. And we can do that, and we can set a new start. A new start of reaching across the aisle and saying, that's an appropriate moral goal. Just as it is an inappropriate moral goal to not pay for it. It is immoral. Let me say it again. To steal from your children and your grandchildren with a wink and a nod saying there's no consequences to us borrowing against your future is immoral. It wouldn't be immoral if everything we were doing was working great, that there wasn't $350 billion worth of duplication, fraud, abuse, and waste in the federal government every year, $350 billion every year, fully documented. It wouldn't be. But that's where we find ourselves. So if you, on the one hand, over here, you have this waste, fraud, and abuse and duplication, and because we want to get out of town, we don't want to do the hard work of ferreting something out of that, or something that is expected to not be effective, to pay for $9.2 billion. And I told my leadership that I didn't have any desire to keep anybody here this weekend through Wednesday. It's not my desire. But in fact, if we're not going to do it, if we're going to take the immoral choice and spend money that we don't have and not eliminate programs that are not effective, programs that won't deliver for the American people, programs that won't accomplish their intended purpose, and just charge it to our grandkids, I feel obliged to stand in the way of that. And it won't be easy. We didn't have much sleep last night. It'll require a lot of effort on my part. But you know, I think the future of our country is worth that. The future of our country is worth taking the consternation of those that will be upset with me because I'm taking this stand. And I want to say at the outside, if somebody had plans, I apologize that those plans might be disrupted. I have plans, and they're going to get disrupted. But I don't apologize for having the legitimate debate on whether or not we grow a spine and start making the same kind of decisions that every family in America is making. And it doesn't matter if you're liberal or conservative. You're still making those decisions. It's not about social issues. The greatest moral question in front of us today are not this range of social issues that so often divide us. The greatest moral issue in front of us today is whether we will preserve this wonderful experiment and create an opportunity through hard work and sacrifice so that the generations that are to come will have the same benefit from it that we've had. So it isn't going to be, it may turn into a partisan debate. That's not my goal. It needs to be a legitimate intellectual debate about the value of being efficient, the value of doing the hard work of making choices that are the highest priority, and eliminating those things, although they might be good, they're less good, in favor of things that are absolutely necessary. And unfortunately, in my almost 5.5 years in the Senate, my side rarely does that. And neither does the other side. So how do we get out of the problem that we have? How do we get out of the gridlock? How do we get out of the anger? And how do we then focus on what the real problem, the real danger to the undermining of America is? The real danger to the undermining of America is the fact that we got a government that's entirely too big. The only thing it's effective and efficient at is wasting money. That we can't afford the government that we have today. That we continue to borrow money that we don't have to pay for things that we don't absolutely need. How do we get at that? And I recognize the debate. Unfortunately, I had a drafting error in what I intended to offer. And so we're offering pay-fors from what I would not think is necessarily the best. But it's better than not paying for it. There's $100 billion in unobligated balances sitting at the agencies in this country. It's already been used to pay for certain things that we've already voted on. Nobody would feel a pinch if we did it that way. I would be inclined to ask for a UC, but I won't do that until I'm assured the other side won't object to it, to have a change in the pay-fors for mine to what I originally intended, but because of a drafting error I can't use. But nevertheless, the legitimate debate is whether we borrow and steal from our kids or we get out of town and send the bill to our kids for something that we're going to consume today. You know, there's a disease that's called consumption. It's syphilis. It's consumption because it consumes you. And we have a disease similar to that. Our disease actions in Congress are consuming away the opportunity of America. Much of it because we lack perspective, but most of it because we lack the will to make the difficult choices that are in front of us. Would you let Harry know I'm almost through? Would you let the majority leader know I'm almost through? And I wonder, actually, I'm sometimes astonished why people don't go home from here at night tremendously concerned about our future. Enough so that it causes us to come together to do the best right thing for America. Why won't we? Is the best right thing for America to borrow this $9.2 billion? Is that the best right thing for America? Or would it be that we eliminated programs that aren't nearly as effective or lessen programs that aren't nearly as effective as what these are going to be for those people who are depending on us today? And not just the best right thing in the short term, because another disease that plagues us is we fail to consider the long term.